Alright, this is exactly what they didn't want out in the daylight. Now the second you look at Claressa Shields and this so-called mega event she keeps calling a movie, well, first off, before we tear open the plastic wrap on this story, let me set the room the right way, because Claressa Shields is a two-time Olympic gold medalist, an undisputed middleweight champion, and by every trophy on the wall she is one of the sharpest, cleanest, most self-authored fighters this sport has produced in a generation. That is the record. That is the paperwork. That is not the debate. Drop a like for that reality, because one like is a receipt, and if you double it up, you just doubled the temperature on the story about to unfold. And you also just cranked the pressure on the people trying to sell you a discount main event and dress it up as a movie all over again. The archives are wide open on Claressa Shields, and the archives don't stutter. And check it, because everything about to be laid out here is not a swing at the woman's resume. This is a forensic tour of the promotional play running behind that August 15th State Farm Arena card in Atlanta, and the play is louder than the punches. The reports around Claressa Shields versus K. Scott are only getting more suspicious and more suspicious, more desperate and more desperate. When a fight is legit, the fight sells itself. When a fight is legit, the seat map lights up like a jukebox. When a fight is legit, you do not need reality TV mercenaries on Kick livestream faking a shoulder hug in a gym in Florida to move tickets 3 weeks out. And that is exactly the play that just got caught in 4K. Claressa Shields, and the entire promotional wing swinging behind her, went out and rented Chrisean Rock like a folding chair, and the plan was so paper-thin the chair collapsed on national livestream. Watch what unfolds, because the second the curtain lifts on how this movie really got financed, the whole marquee starts sweating. Now let us properly introduce the operational actor who lit this whole fuse. Enter Chrisean Rock, better known across the ecosystem as the reality show remix operator, the Zeus Network centerpiece, the queen of the ring light meltdown. Chrisean Rock is not a boxer by upbringing. Chrisean Rock is a personality-first athlete, and there is nothing wrong with that on its own, except when the personality gets loaned out by a promotional cartel to prop up a struggling main event, and the personality forgets the date of the fight she is supposed to be promoting on camera. Chrisean Rock, live, in front of Claressa Shields, mid-interview, mid-hug, mid-workout, had to stop and ask the fighter what day the fight was. Read that sentence again. The paid promoter did not know when the fight was. That is not chemistry. That is a script that got handed to somebody who did not rehearse. And Claressa Shields sat there and swallowed it and kept smiling, because the machine cannot stop rolling once the deposit clears. Let us play the transcript back the way a forensic examiner would, because the words themselves are the receipts. Chrisean Rock, live, blurts out that the main event is August 15th, State Farm Arena, tickets on Ticketmaster, come see your girl, and they are walking me out real soon too, and we know it is a movie when I fight, it is all dressed up, they love you, they love you. And Claressa Shields, in real time, tries to laugh it off and mumble that no, they do not love her, and asks Chrisean Rock to stop, and Chrisean Rock keeps pushing the affirmation loop, and the affirmation loop keeps clanging like a broken cymbal. Everything about that exchange is upside down. If Claressa Shields is truly the greatest woman in the sport, and by the paperwork she is, then why is a reality show personality reassuring her on camera that people love her? Why does the greatest fighter of her generation need a Kickstream cosign to sell her own arena? The archives do not lie. Superstars do not audition for love inside their own promotional cycle. Superstars walk in, and the seat map fills itself. The second you look at how real superstars sell tickets, the whole illusion falls apart. When a genuine main event lands on a calendar, the ticketing platforms behave a specific way. Verified resale prices spike. Front rows disappear inside 48 hours. Secondary markets go into meltdown. Airline searches into the host city climb. Hotels within a 5-block radius push their weekend rates upward. That is what a real event looks like on the data. What we are seeing for the August 15th card in Atlanta does not resemble that curve at all. Screenshots pulled from ticket dashboards show entire lower bowl seat blocks still blue, still available, still whispering for buyers 3 weeks out. That is not the sales pattern of a movie. That is the sales pattern of a matinee that needs a promotional injection. And an injection is exactly what got ordered in the form of Chrisean Rock and, by extension, her sister on the undercard. And check this move, because the sister placement is not decoration. It is architecture. When you need two audiences that are not showing up organically, you rent two ambassadors to the same demographic. One sister headlines the promotional livestream, the other sister headlines the undercard slot. 2 doors, 1 house, 1 goal. Move tickets by any means necessary. That is standard combat sports promotional playbook, and there is no shame in the practice itself. The shame lands when the person doing the renting refuses to admit the renting is happening and doubles down on movie language and demands the world treat a paid promotional cycle like an organic love story. That is where the fantasy cracks. That is where the receipts start filing themselves. Because here is the part they do not want examined. Chrisean Rock, in the middle of that same interview, stops promoting the fight and pivots to policing another woman's relationship, and Claressa Shields, sitting right there, lets it happen. Chrisean Rock leans forward and starts advising Claressa Shields on who she should and should not be dating. The whole conversation stops being about boxing and turns into a live-streamed intervention on somebody else's love life, from a person whose own love life has been an internet spectacle for years. Read that dynamic slowly. A promotional co-star on a paid campaign hijacks the conversation and, instead of pushing tickets, redirects the entire segment into personal relationship advice. That is not organic friendship. That is somebody who was rushed into a room, handed a talking points card that ran out of points, and started freelancing on the only topic she is known for, which is other people's business. Now the internet reacted the way the internet always reacts. Comments sections lit up. Timelines melted. Every clip of Claressa Shields visibly squirming during that pivot got looped, replayed, screenshotted, and dissected. And here is the tell, the giveaway, the moment the whole camouflage falls apart. Claressa Shields, midstream, on somebody else's live, kept sneaking peeks at the chat, mumbling that she wanted to see what people were saying, joking that she wanted a peekaboo look at her own face size in the frame. That is not the body language of a serene champion at the top of her craft. That is the body language of a fighter who knows the promotional machine is not clicking, who knows the numbers are soft, who knows the chat is roasting her hair, her outfit, her promo partner, and her ticket sales all at the same time. When you are truly the greatest, you do not need to peek at the chat. The chat comes to you. Let us apply the ruler of star power here, because the phrase greatest of all time gets tossed around like a burger wrapper. Real star power is measurable. Real star power moves markets before the athlete arrives. When a genuine sports superstar gets attached to a franchise or an event, the venue does not wait for a kick stream to hit sold out. The venue is sold out before the athlete has even given a single interview. When a superstar relocates cities, governors of entire states declare a day in their honor. Local news breaks into regular programming. Season ticket packages evaporate. Ticket prices for every subsequent home game double overnight. The schedule gets rewritten to move that team into primetime windows. That is what real star power looks like in the wild. That is what the paperwork of undeniable greatness produces automatically. And the second you look at what the promotional cycle around Claressa Shields is currently producing, you can see that the machine is having to push and push and push, and the market is not pulling back. And well, the argument the Shields camp will make is that women's boxing is a different market, that combat sports live on a different curve, that comparing to Major League Basketball or stadium concerts is unfair. That argument would carry weight if the promotional team behind the August 15th card was not simultaneously demanding that the world treat this event as a movie, as a cultural moment, as a superstar walkout. You cannot claim superstar-tier cultural gravity and then reach for niche market excuses when the sales curve does not match the claim. You do not get both. Either the event is a movie and the seats should be filling themselves, or the event is a niche women's boxing card and the movie language needs to go back in the drawer. The promotional wing wants both, and physics does not permit both. Here is where the story gets even more layered, because this is not the first time the Shields camp has reached into the reality television talent pool for a promotional lifeline. Chrisean Rock is a Zeus Network signature figure, and Zeus Network has been the informal auxiliary marketing arm for combat sports crossovers for a while now. When mainstream boxing coverage will not carry a fight, the Zeus adjacency picks up the slack. That is a legitimate business. It is a valid distribution play. It is also, when examined closely, an admission that the mainstream demand is not organically there. If Claressa Shields vs. K. Scott could sell itself through traditional boxing media, through DAZN promotion alone, through Solita Promotions' regular pipeline, the reality television side quest would be unnecessary. The reality television side quest exists because the front door numbers were not moving fast enough. That is not a subjective read. That is a market-based deduction. When the front door works, you do not cut a hole in the sidewall. The second you overlay the timeline, the pattern becomes surgical. Chrisean Rock had her own debut fight not long ago. Claressa Shields did not headline the promotional push for that fight. Zeus did. That means the relationship between these two women is not a long-simmering friendship that just happened to bubble up now. That means the relationship is transactional and time-boxed to the August 15th promotional window. And here is the giveaway. Chrisean Rock, in the same interview segment, casually mentioned that she has been doing the same thing for 20 years, that she does not need people stealing her sauce, that she moves the way she moves and would prefer people stop copying her. Read the subtext. That was not aimed at random fans. That was a live broadcast dart thrown at a very specific direction, and Claressa Shields, sitting right there, absorbed it without deflecting. If those two women were genuine friends, that comment does not get made in front of the cameras. That comment gets made off-air or not at all. It got made on air because the relationship is not real. It is a contract with a photo op deliverable. And check it, because the ambient chatter around Chrisean Rock, particularly the rumors about her interactions with married men in the industry, has been a load-bearing wall of her own reality television narrative for years. Whether the whispers are about her orbit around Blueface, or the flare-ups involving Adrian Broner, or the more recent murmurs about who is really in her DMs, the pattern of controversy is documented across the receipts. That is her lane. That is her brand. There is nothing wrong with a personality building a brand on drama. Drama is a legitimate product in the digital economy. What becomes strange is when that personality, on a promotional livestream for someone else's fight, starts advising the fighter on who she should not be dating. That is the reality show remix operator running the same play on new turf. That is not new content. That is old content with a boxing filter. Now let us circle back to Claressa Shields, because the analysis has to be surgical, not vindictive. Claressa Shields is not a fraud in the ring. Claressa Shields has beaten every credible opponent placed in front of her at multiple weight classes, from 154 up to 175 and beyond, and there is a legitimate scarcity problem in her weight division. There simply are not enough top-tier opponents at her weight for her to face on the schedule the pay-per-view economy demands. That is a structural problem in the sport, and it is not her fault. But structural scarcity does not license promotional overreach. Structural scarcity does not license paying reality television influencers to fake friendship on livestream. Structural scarcity does not license calling a card a movie when the ticket dashboard is glowing blue. The correct response to structural scarcity is honesty. The chosen response has been theater. That is the gap the receipts are exposing. Here is the deeper issue, and this is where the analysis gets uncomfortable for the Shields camp. Claressa Shields is arguably the greatest female boxer of her era. But greatness in the ring does not automatically translate into cultural gravity outside the ring. The number of undeniable champions in combat sports history who could not sell out their home city venue is long. Skill and star power are two different currencies. Muhammad Ali was the greatest and also had cultural gravity. Sugar Ray Leonard had both. Floyd Mayweather engineered both. But there are dozens of technically brilliant world champions whose names most casual fans could not recall 5 years after their retirement. Being the greatest technician does not guarantee being the greatest attraction. And the promotional wing behind Claressa Shields appears to be discovering that gap in real time, and instead of building the attraction the slow, honest way, they are trying to shortcut it with reality television rentals. And here is the pattern that the internet has been documenting for months, and which the August 15th push has only accelerated. Every time Claressa Shields enters a new promotional cycle, a new social media persona seems to arrive with her. New hair, new nails, new wardrobe cues, new posing conventions. Screenshots have been circulating that compare her recent style choices to other prominent female athletes and entertainers. Some of those comparisons are unfair. Some of them are eerily specific. The reality television remix operator whispered on livestream that she did not want people stealing her sauce, and the whisper was pointed. Whether the accusations of image borrowing hold up in a court of style is not the argument here. The argument here is that the promotional strategy has increasingly leaned on borrowed visual currency because the organic visual identity was not moving the needle on its own. That is not a boxing problem. That is a branding problem. And branding problems in the pay-per-view era become ticket problems. The second you overlay all of this against the calendar, the desperation math becomes readable. August 15th is not far away. State Farm Arena is a large venue. The undercard has quietly been reshuffled with real professional boxers to lend the card credibility. Reports have surfaced that additional legitimate boxing matches have been added to the undercard specifically to counter the growing perception that the event was drifting into circus territory. Anytime a promotional team quietly bulks up the undercard weeks before a fight, that is the industry code for the main event is not moving on its own. That is a soft numbers rescue play. That is not the behavior of a promotional team writing a movie. That is the behavior of a promotional team trying to prevent a headline about half-empty lower bowls the morning after. And check this move, because Solita Promotions and the DAZN distribution partnership are not amateur operations. These are experienced combat sports professionals. They understand the psychology of a pay-per-view push. They understand the value of a walkout spectacle. They understand that Claressa Shields is one of the most decorated female boxers in living memory. If those professionals are reaching for reality television influencers to move tickets, that decision was made because the internal data indicated the standard playbook was underperforming. Nobody in that room woke up thinking they wanted to rent a kick streamer. Somebody in that room looked at the dashboard, saw the numbers were soft, and greenlit the reality television infusion as a corrective. That decision is the loudest confession in this entire story. Now, the counterargument the Shields loyalists will bring to the comments section will be that any promotional strategy that fills seats is a valid strategy, and there is truth to that. Fill the seats by whatever legal means, and the box office does not judge the method. Fair. What the counterargument cannot answer is why the promotional wing keeps insisting the demand is organic when the promotional tactics scream that it is not. Nobody would raise an eyebrow if Claressa Shields simply said, "Look, women's boxing at this weight class is a hard sell. We are trying every channel to bring new eyeballs to the sport, including reality television crossovers. And we appreciate everybody who shows up." That would be honest. That would earn respect. Instead, the messaging keeps insisting it is a movie, it is a movie, it is a movie, and every viewer with a working internet connection can see that the movie is being financed by rented extras. Let us zoom out and apply the greatness ruler properly, because this is what the timeline keeps missing. Real generational greatness is a delivery mechanism, not a claim. When a genuine superstar signs with a franchise, the entire market adjusts before the superstar has taken a single official action in the new uniform. Season ticket dashboards freeze. Resale markets erupt. Governors declare recognition days. Corporate sponsorships get restructured in the athlete's favor within 72 hours of the signing. The schedule itself gets rewritten to move that athlete into higher visibility windows. Broadcast networks fight over the exclusive rights to their first appearance. That is what greatness delivers automatically. That is the paperwork of undeniable star power. Nothing about the August 15th promotional cycle for Claressa Shields is producing that market response. That is not shade at her boxing. That is a diagnostic read on her cultural velocity. And the two are different measurements. The reason this matters, and the reason the receipts are about to file themselves, is that the entire promotional narrative Claressa Shields has been building for years relies on the audience accepting her cultural velocity as automatic. The messaging assumes the world already agrees she is the biggest attraction in women's combat sports. When the market response does not confirm that assumption, the messaging has two choices. It can adjust the messaging to match the market, or it can double down on the messaging and manufacture the appearance of demand through paid promotional theater. The August 15th cycle has clearly chosen the second option, and the internet has caught the receipts in real time, and the receipts are only going to keep multiplying between now and fight night. And here is the meta story that most of the coverage is missing. Chrisean Rock is not the villain of this narrative. Chrisean Rock is the honest one. Chrisean Rock forgot the date of the fight on camera because Chrisean Rock is genuinely a reality television personality who was slotted into a promotional segment she was not deeply invested in. That is not deception. That is just a paid appearance being what a paid appearance is. The person carrying the burden of the deception in this story is not the reality television star. It is the promotional cycle around Claressa Shields that has insisted the whole segment was organic love. The whole segment was not organic love. The whole segment was a transaction. And treating a transaction like organic love is what triggered the entire internet backlash. Now, the second you look at the Zeus Network side of this equation, another layer emerges. Zeus Network has a rich history of pipeline crossing between reality television and combat sports monetization. That pipeline is not a secret. That pipeline has produced real revenue and real cultural moments. That pipeline has also, on multiple occasions, produced fights, feuds, and promotional cycles that critics have called performative wrestling with boxing gloves on. The August 15th card is not officially a Zeus event, but the presence of Zeus signature talent on the promotional push, and on the undercard through Chrisean Rock's sister, and in the informal marketing chatter, tells you the two ecosystems have quietly merged for this particular push. That merger is a legitimate strategic decision. It also permanently changes how the fight is going to be perceived by traditional boxing purists, and the promotional team clearly weighed that trade-off and decided it was worth the reach. And check it, because when you strip away every layer of theater and look at the raw question, the raw question is a simple one. Will Claressa Shields vs. K. Scott sell out State Farm Arena on August 15th? The answer, based on every publicly visible data point available 3 weeks out, is that the sellout is not guaranteed, is not on the current trajectory, and is why the promotional team is pulling every lever available, including the reality television infusion. That is the honest reading. That is not a hater reading. That is not a diss. That is a market-based description of what the numbers currently show. Fights sell tickets or fights do not sell tickets. Cultural moments arrive automatically or they do not. The receipts are readable in the ticket dashboards, in the resale markets, in the promotional pattern, and in the visible desperation of the promotional cycle itself. The undercard amnesia complex, as the internet is beginning to name this phenomenon, is when a promotional team forgets that the main event is supposed to sell the undercard, not the other way around. When the undercard has to be quietly bulked up with legitimate boxers to prevent the main event from feeling like a circus, that is undercard amnesia. When the main event fighter has to appear on reality television adjacent live streams to promote her own card because the traditional boxing media rotation is not moving the needle, that is undercard amnesia. When the fighter herself, on somebody else's live stream, has to sneak peeks at the chat to see what people are saying about her, that is the deepest form of undercard amnesia. It is the moment a fighter's confidence has become externally dependent on a reality television affirmation loop, and that is a state no boxer at the highest level should have to occupy. Now let us give Claressa Shields the honest defense the analysis requires, because the goal here is precision, not condemnation. Claressa Shields did not create the structural gap between technical greatness and cultural gravity. She inherited a sport that has historically underinvested in women's marquee promotion. She inherited a media landscape that undercovers her weight division. She inherited a pay-per-view economy that rewards spectacle over skill. She has been asked to be simultaneously the best fighter, the loudest promoter, the most stylish influencer, the most quotable talker, and the most bankable ticket seller, and no single human is engineered to hit all 5 metrics at once. The system is unfair. The system is under-scaffolded. That is real. And within that unfair system, Claressa Shields has made promotional choices, some brilliant, some questionable, and the August 15th Chrisean Rock infusion belongs firmly in the questionable column. The reason the questionable column matters is that promotional missteps in the internet era are permanent. 10 years ago, a soft promotional cycle would fade from public memory within weeks. In the internet era, every awkward live stream moment gets clipped, mirrored, memified, and archived across a dozen platforms. Every peekaboo glance at the chat becomes a permanent piece of the fighter's public record. Every mispronounced fight date by a paid influencer becomes a reference clip for years. The internet's memory is longer than any promotional cycle. That is what makes the August 15th rollout so risky, because whether or not the fight sells out, the promotional cycle itself will be studied in reels and case studies for a long time. And here is the sharpest angle the coverage has missed, and this is the angle that the receipts are about to file themselves on. If Claressa Shields wins on August 15th, and by every predictive metric she should, the win does not erase the promotional cycle that preceded it. The win exists inside the memory of the cycle. Casual fans who caught the Chrisean Rock livestream will not remember the technical brilliance of the middleweight championship rounds. They will remember the reality television side quest. That is a branding cost that no highlight reel can pay off. That is the compounding interest on a promotional shortcut. And the promotional wing behind Claressa Shields either did not calculate that cost, or calculated it and decided the short-term ticket rescue was worth the long-term brand contamination. Either way, the calculation is now public record, and the internet is not going to forget it. The counterpunch the Shields camp could throw right now, and the smart move if they are reading this, is to pivot immediately. Drop the movie language. Drop the theater. Return to the fundamentals. Talk about the boxing. Talk about K. Scott as a legitimate threat. Talk about the WBC and WBA unified middleweight championship stakes. Talk about the technical adjustments Claressa Shields has made in camp. Talk about the DAZN broadcast. Talk about the Undercard as a genuine showcase of emerging women's boxing talent. Give the boxing purists a real reason to buy in. That pivot would rescue the credibility of the cycle in the final 3 weeks. Whether the pivot happens is the last remaining open question, and the answer will be revealed by the promotional choices between now and August 15th. Because the second you look at what a serious promotional pivot would look like and compare it to what is currently happening on the timeline, the gap is enormous. Right now, the promotional cycle is still leaning into reality television energy, still deploying influencer partnerships, still using movie language, still pretending the demand is organic. That is not a pivot. That is doubling down. And doubling down inside a soft numbers window is exactly the promotional mistake that turns a manageable narrative problem into a permanent case study in how not to sell a championship fight in the streaming era. Let us apply the star power ruler one more time, because the comparison is instructive, not cruel. Imagine any of the top male boxing pay-per-view attractions of the last decade requiring a reality television influencer to live stream a workout hug to sell tickets 3 weeks out from a title fight. The image itself is absurd. Those fights sell themselves through the fighter's own gravitational pull. That is what generational star power looks like at the ticket window. And the reason the comparison matters is that the promotional wing behind Claressa Shields has, for years, positioned her as belonging in that same conversation. If she belongs in that conversation, the ticket window should behave accordingly. When it does not, the discrepancy is the story. And the discrepancy is currently the entire story. And check this move, because this is the last twist the receipts have not been given credit for. Chrisean Rock's presence on the promotional push is not going to convert Chrisean Rock's audience into boxing fans in the numbers the Shields camp is hoping for. That is not how audience transfer works. Reality television audiences are loyal to reality television personalities inside reality television formats. When the personality steps outside the format to promote something the audience did not sign up for, the audience largely does not follow. That is data. That is media consumption research. That is a well-documented pattern across every reality to adjacent vertical crossover attempt of the last decade. So even the strategic assumption behind the Chrisean Rock rental that her audience will convert to ticket buyers is on shaky empirical ground. The math on the crossover is not as generous as the promotional team appears to have assumed. The reason the whole cycle matters beyond August 15th is that women's boxing as a category is at a genuine inflection point. The sport needs credible superstars whose star power is measured in organic ticket demand, not in influencer partnerships. Every time a marquee women's fight has to be propped up with reality television theater, the sport as a whole gets marginally less legitimate in the eyes of casual fans deciding whether to invest their attention in the category. That is a long-term drag on the entire women's boxing economy. Claressa Shields, as the current face of the category, has an outsized responsibility not to contribute to that drag. The August 15th promotional cycle, as currently constructed, is contributing to that drag. That is the metacritique. That is the systemic layer. And the systemic layer is why this story is not a personal attack. It is a market-level warning. Now some of the readers of the timeline right now will point out that Claressa Shields is not the only combat sports figure to lean on influencer crossovers to sell tickets, and that is factually accurate. The entire influencer boxing category, from the crossover pay-per-views to the streaming platform bouts, has been reshaping the ticket-selling economy for years. What separates Claressa Shields from the pure influencer boxing category is that she is a legitimate world champion with a resume that predates the influencer economy. She should not need the influencer crossovers to sell her fights. That is the friction point. When a legitimate champion adopts the promotional tactics of the influencer boxing category, the champion inherits some of the credibility discount that comes with that category. That is the trade-off. That is the cost. And here is where the analysis lands, because the receipts are now fully assembled. The August 15th fight will happen. The bell will ring. Claressa Shields will most likely win. Kay Scott will fight bravely. DAZN will broadcast. Some tickets will be sold. Some seats will be empty. The reality television side quest with Chrisean Rock will fade from the immediate news cycle within days. But the promotional pattern the cycle exposed will remain readable in the archives, and every future Claressa Shields promotional push will be examined against this template. That is the compounding brand cost. That is the invisible ledger that the promotional wing appears to have overlooked. And the invisible ledger is the ledger that ultimately determines whether a fighter transitions from technical greatness into cultural permanence, or gets remembered as an all-time technician whose promotional cycles were never quite equal to her ring craft. The final read on this whole story is not a takedown. The final read is a diagnostic. Claressa Shields is a decorated, historic, technically brilliant fighter who is trapped inside a promotional apparatus that is repeatedly making decisions that undercut her legacy. The Chrisean Rock livestream is a symptom, not the disease. The disease is a promotional strategy that has confused activity for demand, theater for gravity, influencer partnerships for organic star power. Until that promotional apparatus corrects course, every Claressa Shields fight will produce moments like the peekaboo glance at the chat, moments like the paid promoter forgetting the fight date, moments like the awkward on-camera relationship advice hijack. Those moments are not bugs in the promotional cycle. Those moments are features of a promotional cycle that has stopped trusting the fighter to sell herself and has started outsourcing the selling to whoever will take the check. And the receipts on this specific August 15th cycle are about to file themselves in real time. Watch the ticket dashboards over the next 3 weeks. Watch the resale markets. Watch the undercard adjustments. Watch the promotional pivots. Watch whether the movie language finally goes back in the drawer. Watch whether the Chrisean Rock rental gets extended into another live stream or quietly retired. Every one of those data points is a paragraph in the case study that boxing business analysts will be writing for years about how a decorated champion's promotional cycle came apart in slow motion on a public timeline. The archives are open. The chat is watching. The receipts do not need editors. So with all of that laid out, drop your read below. Do you think Claressa Shields versus Kay Scott sells out State Farm Arena on August 15th? Or does the arena finish the night with visible empty blocks in the upper bowl? Do you think the Chrisean Rock promotional infusion helps the numbers, hurts the credibility, or does both simultaneously? Do you think the movie language survives the next 3 weeks? Or does the promotional team finally pivot back to boxing fundamentals? And do you think the internet is being unfair to Claressa Shields? Or is the internet just reading the receipts the way the receipts were meant to be read? Every one of those questions is live. Every one of those questions has an answer that will reveal itself before the opening bell, and the timeline is going to be watching every single move. Thank you for staying with the full breakdown. If you made it this far, drop a like, subscribe if you have not already, and hype the video up because the next breakdown on the horizon is going to cover the undercard adjustments and the DAZN broadcast strategy. And the reveal on that one is going to be even sharper. The archives are open. The chat is watching. The receipts do not need editors.